Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the Ecom Wiz podcast today. And our guest today is Troy Johnston. And Troy is an Amazon seller. He has successfully exited one of his flagship brands for multiple seven figures. And now he's the co-founder of Seller.Tools, and he focuses on providing data-driven solutions to help Amazon sellers rank and succeed on selling on Amazon. And thanks for coming in, Troy, today. So could you give us a little bit about your background, like when you started selling on Amazon, and how did you transition into creating Seller.Tools?
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate the great intro. And so a little bit about me in terms of getting into FBA, Amazon in general. I was not necessarily somebody who really understood the e-com space when I got started. I started way back when Amazing Selling Machine kind of was getting off the ground as a course, and Matt and Jason and those guys really getting the word out about this new thing about selling on Amazon. And they had already gotten past, I think, their first iteration. If I remember correctly, I think I was a part of ASM 2, where it was getting to be a little bit more well known. Obviously, not as saturated or as popular now as a concept and as a means of leveraging Amazon. So was fortunate enough to take that course kind of on a whim. It was kind of a really unique circumstance that got me kicking off that process. I wasn't somebody who did internet marketing or anything really along those lines. Very conservative background. I was working as a project manager at that time. So I was in the corporate realm, started to take this more seriously, was working alongside an entrepreneurial friend of mine, and we had kind of some synergy pushing each other to really take full advantage of this thing that was Amazon FBA. And we were fortunate enough, very, very cognizant of the fact that at that point in time with Amazon FBA, when you put $1 in, you were able to more easily get $3 or $4 back. So if you acknowledge that and we're willing to put the time, the energy, and the finances behind it, you could get those disproportionate returns. And so the timing was right, the effort was right. I was willing to throw in a lot of finances, capital at the time to take full advantage. And 2.5 years later, sold that brand that I was building at the time, and have now kind of worn different hats. I've served as a consultant for clients building their own FBA businesses, and now working with Seller.Tools, developing solutions, features, providing data, insight to sellers as they look to start, grow, and scale their businesses as well.
Nice. That's that's a really awesome story. It seems like everyone kind of started from the corporate side and then somehow started, learning about Amazon and then getting into it and then realizing, hey, there's a lot of opportunity. But now, I started back in 2013, and I've seen how everything's changed and grown so much, right? And a lot of the new sellers these days come in and they want to join the party, but it's a different game than it was before, right? So that's kind of the reason why you and I are here. We're trying to help these guys out with some of the knowledge that we had back then, and then try to automate and try to give them some data and insight on how to succeed and give them an edge over, some of the current competition out there. So yeah, that's really interesting. What do you think about what has changed over since you started? And, I know that back then there was a lot of strategies that as a seller, I can, easily, rank and get my, listing to page 1 or page 2 really easily without spending money on. There was no PPC. There was you could do a lot of black hat stuff, but these days it seems like Amazon has really crushed a lot of those things that you could do back then, and now it's more doing your due diligence and really studying the competition out there before you can even decide to even buy a product or invest in it, right? So the biggest mistake I've seen with a lot of sellers is they have some money in this. They think that there's a really good product out there. They want to sell it, but they don't realize, it's really hard to compete with them. So, what are your thoughts on some of the new sellers coming in right now? What should they do and avoid?
Yeah, I think it's really important to always remind yourself and be cognizant of the fact that Amazon will always have pretty specific levers that it rewards in an FBA business. And so really that has changed, evolved in some areas, kind of devolved in others. But essentially, if as a seller you can identify those and be really tapped in, I think that's really where you find yourself behind the eight ball a little bit. Is if you're not really tapped into some of those levers, you can fall prey to the shiny object or the new voice or this piece of content or a guru, or, you know, saying these are the next big thing. But really, if you just focus on the source and what it wants at the end of the day, you can kind of make what is seemingly complex very simple. And so those are really big things that we champion and we continue to see, you know, in terms of your question of what's going to continue to be the case moving forward. Amazon is always going to have to figure out a way to give some products more visibility than others. And it's a customer-centric marketplace. So if you can focus on ranking strategies which are driven by keywords, I often see, again, sellers that they undervalue the power of keywords, not only for, of course, organic visibility, but with the emphasis on PPC, because Amazon loves PPC. That's a dollar in their pocket in a number of different ways, right? You know, they make their return multiple ways, through the execution, through the fulfillment fees. All that good stuff is rolled up in there. So of course they're going to make that as easy as possible for sellers to focus on, to leverage. But the root of that, based on customer intent and making it a intuitive buying experience, it's still, keywords are the bridge to that gap between product and buyer. So getting that right is going to, as has always been the case, is going to be a crucial piece of the equation. And then we're doing some more advanced things with that as well, like with our platform with things like ManyChat. There are more obvious, robust solutions that make a lot of sense to overserve, meet those key objectives, pull those important Amazon levers, and it checks like a dozen boxes. It's just, you know, when I talk about ManyChat, I feel like I'm painting a utopia of like, this is just such a great solution for Amazon sellers. But in many ways it is, because you can do it for ranking, you can do it for review capture, you can build your list, you can do so many things with these types of solutions. But at the same time, I also know that's where sellers get bogged down, right? Is that what's seemingly complex, they're taking it to that level and thinking, instead of thinking, okay, what's my quick wins? What's the low-hanging fruit to take that first step and then build from that really solid foundation?
Totally, I totally agree. And since you've been talking about ManyChat, let's talk a little bit about ManyChat. You know, it's something that kind of just came out of nowhere about a year and a half ago, maybe. That's when I first started hearing about it, and it seems like a great concept, right? And you know, really high open rates. And I mean, do you think that at some point people would stop responding to ManyChat? Because, you know, like with this whole AI thing coming out, people think that they're talking to a real person, but then really they're just talking to a flow, right, in a way. So what's your ideas or thoughts? You're an expert on it. I'm not really that, I don't know ManyChat that well. So for someone that's just starting to learn about ManyChat, like what is the concept on how to make sure that ManyChat is effective? Like, do you, you know, notify the person right away that they're a robot, or do you try to trick them into thinking that they're talking to a real person and build a really complicated flow that, you know, gets them into the funnel to, you know, convert to either getting review or, you know, coupon or whatever it is that you're looking for?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, is that inherently it can feel very rigid because there is not that same personal communication, or in the execution, it can come off that way. So I think it's really important for sellers to think about that when they're configuring their ManyChat flows, is there a time where we experience a saturation of this space where the gold rush is kind of over? It kind of mimics FBA in that way, with that same sort of sentiment. So I think it's really important. And again, this is something we do in our businesses. We really encourage with some of the things we can do with our platform. But if you can add enough technical sophistication, you can mitigate what can be a very impersonal interaction. So if we can automate that flow in such a way where we're over-serving, where we're giving customers immediate order status information, or verifying their orders for them, so we're not asking them to do, instead of 10 steps, they do 1, so we're not overburdening them, you can see how problematic it gets when you're, you know, 10xing your expectations of that customer, instead of serving them through automations. And then of course you can create some additional triggers in that flow to where if a customer needs support, it's sent right away to the right person in the right channel that gives them the opportunity to respond more quickly. So where my mind goes is, immediate Slack notifications, immediate tickets created in Zendesk, notifying admins, even just as low-hanging fruit within ManyChat itself, is really just thinking of there are always, more often than not, there are technical solutions to those problems where you want that benefit, the fact that it's immediate engagement and it can be media rich. There's all kinds of really cool creative ways you can do it. Things we used to do with email, we can do now where founder video, I can hop on an iPhone and say, hey, I'm the founder, you can see me. I can drop that in a ManyChat flow. I can have that great open, that click-through rate, high engagement. So yeah, there's all kinds of really cool and fun and creative ways to execute.
Could you give us an example of like how a typical flow would work and how would we actually integrate that data? Because right now, as a seller, I sell a product, I get an order, comes in from Amazon. Like, how do I get that information to my customer? Like you mentioned earlier about providing good customer support, right? If I wanted to build that into my ManyChat flow, like can you give us like an example of a sequence and how like a seller might set that up?
Yeah, absolutely. So really where we encourage sellers to start is for the main objective of ranking keywords. So if that's a starting place, whether you use a Facebook ad or a ref URL, unique URL you have on an insert, a sticker, something along those lines for a customer. But if we're starting at the place of ranking, we could deliver a Facebook ad, take them through the flow, distribute that single-use promo code through either an optimized link, a really straightforward walkthrough. You can add points where if there is support needed, that's where, again, that integration to where if you want to have them send a message directly to, let's say, Slack, to a right and appropriate team member, they can do that and be notified right away. But if not, remove that friction, have them walk through, realize that purchase. You can bolt on, let's say, like a review capture step where, now that you've taken full advantage of your order, maybe drop in your order ID. We can confirm their order again in real time. Would you love to let us know? We'd love your feedback about your product and buying experience. Maybe use a founder video of, hey, thanks so much for taking part in purchasing our product. We really hope you enjoy it. You could do that right after somebody bought and then have a delay to where the review request, let's say you want it 5, 7, 8, of course, keep in mind your product, your category, what makes sense for that timing, but then revisit that and say, hey, how was your buying experience? We hope you enjoyed opening our product, experiencing some of the benefits. And then that's where you can get creative with the review request as well. So ranking and reviews are really the starting place, right? Just don't add too many layers, but start there and then build from that foundation.
Gotcha. So last few weeks, I think maybe a month ago, I saw like Amazon is now trying to crack down on the buyer data, right? Providing it to the seller either through the API or just in general. So how does that affect getting that information to be able to import that into, let's say, your Facebook custom audience campaign or your ad? Or are you saying that it's better to just have some product insert with some kind of QR code or link for them to automatically input that data so you can get it? Or are you still, basically, do you think Amazon's trying to crack down on this ManyChat? Because it seems like they're trying to protect that customer data now, right? Preventing developers from seeing that information.
Yeah, which I think it has sort of twofold implications because it really stresses the short-term prioritization of you creating your own list, because Amazon still effectively views that transaction that you're taking, that you are part of as a seller, is with an Amazon customer. It is not with your customer. So correct. They want that insulation. But the beauty of ManyChat is as soon as you get somebody in to your list, you have that open, that click-through rate, that cut, like it's such a big win to kind of bring them over from the Amazon side, that you should rightfully be prioritizing it. But I think in terms of the creative execution, kind of as you alluded to, thinking about ways of making it very easy with packaging, insert stickers, getting people into those flows. And really, we are still venturing and looking at ways of building those really solid custom audiences, lookalike audiences. And I think, again, customers should be thinking or sellers, should be thinking about what's some other low-hanging fruit. Can you pixel your website, another landing page? Can you build audiences that you can kind of capture more immediately, and then leverage those for Facebook ads? But I mean, like I said, to your point, I think it almost stresses the fact that they see the value that you get as a seller, but that shouldn't keep you from a seller prioritizing that and figuring out what kind of creative ways you can make that happen.
Totally understand. I think one of the biggest fears right now with a lot of sellers is account suspension, right? And there's a lot of ambiguity inside Amazon's TOS that talks about like what they can and can't do, right? So for example, a lot of sellers ask all the time, like, can I put an external link or some kind of, inside my email template, which is, the answer is no, right? But for a product insert, it's kind of a gray area, right? And for us to insert some kind of ManyChat, like, code or link, that could still kind of be viewed under Amazon's eyes as an external link, right? So what do you think as a seller? Is it risky? Is it not risky? Like, what's your thoughts on getting around this and making sure that, we stay compliant? Because getting suspended is the worst thing that can happen, right? So that's what everyone fears.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I really deep dived into the TOS when I drafted a recent article for our blog. And really the way that I view it, and this is not just taking the layperson's perspective, because obviously if you buy a Sony product, you buy an Apple product, you would have to go out of your way to miss the link back to their website on any packaging. So packaging seems to be sort of very easy to say, well, if the big guys can do it, why would you have a problem with, or how could you not enforce that at scale with the same way as the small guys do? And so I think the execution is important, but ultimately when I, again, read the TOS, the way that I synthesize what they're trying to convey, again, from my perspective, anything that you do that it's as an advantage as an Amazon seller, you should probably think is against the TOS. So that's kind of my starting place philosophically, because they sort of give themselves enough room with the ambiguity of the language to be able to enforce things at will, just on a whim, to be totally honest. But I really, at the same time, try to be careful with execution. So as an example, for this particular example, if I were to use, let's say, inserts on select number of packages, so it's not impacting the entirety of my inventory, I use a subdomain that redirects to my ManyChat ref URL, and I can use that either subtly, so it's alongside, let's say, my website link, to where it's just sort of kind of baked in, or I can use that more overtly and say, check us out for more great deals, value, and information, something along those lines. It's a bigger call out. That can be a more guised way of still meeting that same objective, where people are seeing that domain. Usually I make it a nice vanity URL. So whether it's loyalty.domain.com or giftdomain.com, and having it lead right into that ManyChat flow, that's how I would look at execution. So like I said, ultimately the TOS, it's pretty damning, but at the same time, the way I really view it, and especially in this specific case, I view it more as linking away from the detail page. I know external links through email, it's a little bit more explicit, but if you really get down to the verbiage, it does not seem to identify specifically packaging directing to other links. It seems to be more specific to, like I said, product detail page information, that type of thing, directing away, which is totally intuitive. Obviously, Amazon, if they've earned that customer on their website, even on your product detail page, they don't want them clicking elsewhere for more information.
Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, one of the things that I've talked to some of these bigger supplement sellers is that they've been telling me that, I don't know if you've seen the supplements that you buy on Amazon, but they all have that sticker that, on the top that says they click on here, get a free bottle, right? And a lot of people ask, how do they get away with that, right? Because it's actually an external link. And like you said, it's, they're still alive, right? If Amazon knew about that, they'd probably shut them down. So basically what they told me is that because all their products have that link, right? Not just the Amazon inventory. Like they have their own websites, they have other sources they sell on, they might sell on Walmart or whatever. As long as all of their products have that link, they've told me that Amazon has actually told them that it's okay to have that in there. So it's actually kind of interesting to know that, Amazon really wants to check specifically that you're not just trying to divert the traffic just from your Amazon inventory. But if that's just part of your product, like for example, having a warranty card in your product for TV, it's like you have to know their website, right? There's no way around it, right? So,
Right.
So I think there's certain rules that are not well defined in the TOS, and that's, kind of wish that, a lot of sellers wish that they, Amazon give them more clear information on how to do it. And I don't know if you talk to anyone from Amazon, but it's hard for us to connect with anyone from their team that can actually give us any insight, right? Because it seems like you talk to one guy, they tell you one thing, talk to another guy, they tell another thing. So it's really like a case-to-case basis. So yeah. And I totally agree with you. You should try to, leverage whatever opportunity you can, right, to help grow your sales, right? So, and if you can get away with it and it's somewhat within TOS and it works and other big sellers are doing it, then you should be doing the same thing, right? Until Amazon specifically comes out with a notice and says, hey, you cannot do this, right? And then you got to stop, right? So,
Right.
So that's a really good point. So what are your, what are you most excited about the next few years on Amazon? Like, what are you looking forward to? Like, how do you think, how do you think Amazon's going to evolve from here? Because we've changed so much in the last few years, right? And now is Amazon just growing like crazy, right? There's so many products, so many sales. It feels like it's getting saturated, right? So what do you think Amazon can do now to help sellers improve the experience and, get more quality products on Amazon? Like, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think we'll continue to see this trend of the phasing out of vendor, and as that's taking place, we're going to see even more empowerment of 3P sellers. I think with Bezos' acknowledgement, kind of the outlay, the sheer volume of 3P sellers, and them continuing to kind of show their hand. I mean, brand analytics, we're seeing more information, more data being made available to sellers. I think they're going to continue to try to make it easy to effectively start utilizing FBA and empowering brands and sellers with more resources. So I think in the end, that is good. But I think at the same time, when the barrier of entry continues to lessen, we're not going to see any less saturation than we have historically. So I think the impetus is really on the sellers to think about what they're doing differently, how they're leveraging some resources, because I think that's what's really exciting too. What we're talking about in terms of some of the technical solutions, obviously with our software and platform as well. There's just so many ways to add in where we used to maybe rely on team members, VAs, different solutions, where you can leverage these tools and be lean teams and drive just exceptional results and performance on the platform.
Awesome. Yeah. So what are some of I know last week you messaged me and you told me that you guys released a couple of new products over at Seller.Tools. Could you tell us a little bit more about those products and what they do and how they can help sellers?
Yeah. So we've got a lot going on. I think maybe what I alluded to was some of the things that we have kind of unlocked or made available to sellers as some of our exclusive features. So one of those being reviewable, which is a instant visibility into whether or not a review block has been placed on your ASIN. So that's become more and more prominent now as deploying high velocity sales strategies alongside the number of reviews you're capturing. That's kind of what we're hypothesizing as the reason for these review blocks, but they can be intermittent. They can often happen right when you start or create a brand new ASIN and product launch. So without that visibility, of course, you could be spending time and money without knowing if you're able to even receive reviews. So highly insightful data point there. And then we also just rolled out estimated sales by keyword, which we're really excited about. We know sellers really get excited with sales and revenue numbers as they're projecting what they can expect for a product, and how they should prioritize those keywords. So simply by sharing the keyword data with us, we can inform them what they can expect in terms of estimated monthly sales behind that keyword.
Gotcha. So in terms of the keyword data and the estimated monthly sales, I know there's a lot of your competitors also, there's a lot of tools out there that do the same thing, right? And it seems like every tool gives a different number estimation, right? It's not, nobody knows exactly unless they're Amazon, right? So how would you say, Seller.Tools is different, and how can you guys try to give a more paint a more accurate picture for the sellers to make sure that they're getting the right data and getting the right?
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I mean, really what we have to do is just be really sophisticated with data analysis, taking the information we've got available and try to map it to corroborate those data points and arrive at a number that we're comfortable with. So what gets really unique is the estimated sales by keyword. I haven't seen anybody else come out with that type of data point. I know the sales and revenue, highly popular for a lot of product research tools. And so we had to be a bit creative because obviously at the keyword level, it's very nuanced. But really that's what it boils down to, is taking the data set you have available, mapping it, corroborating it, revisiting it, sort of being very methodical with it. So again, it'll continue to change over time. But what we're really excited about is just being able to stress test those data points, and feel as confident as we can, because at the end of the day, we know that they are estimates, but we know sellers are often starting businesses, making big decisions in their businesses based on that data. So we take it very seriously to be able to get it as close, as approximate as possible to those real sales figures.
Gotcha. And does this data, does it roll for like all different types of categories? I mean, I imagine different categories might have different algorithms built in for Amazon, right? Based on just, volume or search volume, right? So are you guys able to paint accurate information for, just all different types of categories in general?
Yeah. So this data has been mapped out for all categories. For the estimated sales keyword data point in particular, right now it's at about 1 million keywords. So it is somewhat of a work in progress. And to a degree, that's why we wanted to just release it and give it to sellers so they can have some visibility into it while we're sort of working in the background to really fill in and build out that data set.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Yeah, so everyone check out Seller.Tools. I have a link below. So really excited about the new tool that you're releasing, and hopefully it can, help out a lot of sellers. So before I end this conversation, what are some tips you can give to the newer sellers about, doing the research and then finding the right product? What are the biggest mistakes you've seen for sellers when they start? Like, how do they avoid wasting their money and their time? What's the biggest tip you would give them?
Yeah, I think when you're first starting out, I think it's definitely, be willing to go through the steps that make sense to you once you're sourcing a product, but be open to the idea of figuring out how you're not going to bring a commoditized product into your space. This is really where you move from seller and into a business owner and thinking, okay, if I'm putting myself in presumably you're an Amazon buyer, what's going to compel you to buy your product over what you see in terms of the competitive landscape? Because it's really great, of course, to find the right product that's the right weight with the right price, with the right numbers, checking off all of those boxes. But if you're bringing to market widget A and it's the same as widget B, widget C, widget D, you're gonna run into problems right from the outset. So always understand and be mindful of your point of difference right from day one. So like I said, there's nothing wrong with running through, whether it's a course or you're following a guru or, however you're coming to find FBA and starting your journey. There's nothing wrong with necessarily walking through that sequence, but never close your mind to the idea of what am I doing differently? I need to be able to point at what I'm doing differently. So that way, when you hit the market, that point of diversification can show up in your revenue and your performance, your ability to rank, capture reviews, all of those important things in an Amazon-centric business.
That's some great insight. Last question for you. What do you think about the future of Amazon? Do you think there could be another superior platform that comes out in the next few years that could take over and everyone migrate to that platform? Because it's kind of hard to imagine, right? That how big Amazon is now and how can it go down, right? But as we know in history, that all big companies have, their peaks, and then they always eventually have some competitor come in and take them out. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it's a really great question. I mean, I am constantly keeping an eye on what Walmart is doing with them gobbling up Jet. Jet did a great job of making themselves a player. Obviously, not at the scale, same volume as Amazon, but those consolidation of resources is going to be key for somebody to try to come in any way close to the scale of what Amazon's doing. So I think in terms of a player, they're the most intuitive. Right now, it's a little bit easier to rank on Walmart, which is great, but it's being a big fish in a relatively small pond for most sellers. But at the same time, even though I love Amazon, I love knowing Amazon and really leveraging it to its fullest. That competition is great. It's great for the seller and for the buyers. I mean, this push to one day shipping, this overall customer-centric approach. I think it's going to serve everybody in the e-commerce environment more, because that sets the standard. That's sort of the benchmark from which channels have to perform, brands have to perform, and it's to the benefit, I think, for all parties. So we'll have to see. I'm always keeping a close eye on what they're doing, what they're shipping, how they're responding, how they're reacting to Amazon.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think the biggest thing is really that one day shipping now. It's like, how can anyone come up with that fast of a shipping? Because as a buyer, that's the only reason why I want to buy on Amazon, is because I can get it right away. So I don't need to drive my car down the road and pick it up, right? Or like eBay, I don't have to wait like 5 to 7 days before I get my package, right? So it's really hard to see that someone else can build another infrastructure to, somewhat challenge or compete with Amazon. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. But for now, definitely Amazon is king. So
that's right.
Yeah. Well, anyways, it's been awesome to have you on and talk with you today. So everybody check out Troy. He's a co-founder over at Seller.Tools, and they're building some awesome products out there. And hopefully, we can talk again in the future. And then thanks for having you on again. So
awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Hanson. Really appreciate it. Great catching up with you.
Yep. Thank you.
Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and for more information, please visit feedbackwiz.com.